Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 13, 2019 is now called to order. Please take a moment to silence your devices. Ms. Arnowitz, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Badami? Here. Commissioner Birch? Here. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tavana?
Here.
Commissioner Janoff? Here. And Chair Hudas?
Here.
Thank you. And for the record, Vice Chair Hansen is not here this evening.
We have to report on this one. We have to report on two of them.
I don't have it today.
That's there.
Okay, 2 meetings today.
Okay. I'd like everyone to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome back Commissioner O'Donnell. We missed you, and we didn't have a meeting last month, so I wanted to just welcome you back.
Thank you very much.
As the Planning Commission conducts this meeting this evening on behalf of the Town Council and residents of Los Gatos, we encourage active participation, which is essential for democracy and critical to the work of the Planning Commission. That participation can occur in two ways. Written comments about agenda items, which we always welcome, as well as two opportunities to participate in verbal communications. The first one is to speak on any subject that is not on the agenda for the evening. And also, of course, during the hearings, the public is welcome to speak on the items that are on the agenda. And in either case, we ask you to please fill out a speaker card and just pass it to the front. If you want to speak on any of these, please come to the podium and adjust the microphone so you're speaking directly into it. Please state your name and address for the record. And in fairness to all who want to speak at this meeting, it's requested that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. So the first opportunity is verbal communications, and members of the public are invited to address the Commission on any issue not on the agenda of tonight's meeting. I wonder if we have anyone who wants to speak on that. I don't see any cards on that tonight. Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is the consent calendar. We have 2 items of the consent calendar to be acted before a single motion. Before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the public or commissioner may ask that that item be removed and considered separately. If it's removed, we'll consider it either before the rest of the agenda or afterwards. The 2 items on the agenda tonight, on the consent calendar tonight, are approval of the minutes, October 9, 2019, and the architecture and site application, S19042, project location 26 Alpine Avenue, property owner DMJ Home Solutions, applicant Tom Sloan, requesting approval of a time extension of an architecture and site approval for construction of a new single-family residence and removal of a large protected tree on vacant property zoned R120, APN 529-37042. So this is an application for a time extension. Anyone want to pull any items? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Yes. I was going to make a motion that we approve both items on the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Commissioner Birch?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. I'll now call the question. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously, 6-0. We'll now move to the items on the public hearing portion of our agenda, and we'll consider item number 3, which is conditional use permit application U12002, property location 300 Marchmont Drive, Applicant, property owner Mark Silver, Hillbrook School, project planner Jocelyn Schupman. This is an annual review of a approved conditional use permit. Ms. Schupman, would you like to give us a report, please?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This evening is the annual review of Hillbrook's conditional use permit. Over the past year, traffic numbers have been counted and posted on the town's website, as well as the town's traffic consultant performing a video review of the traffic count during the spring and fall semesters as required by the conditions of approval. The review of these numbers, as detailed in the staff report this evening, shows that Hillbrook School has not exceeded their maximum daily trips for regular days or for the exception days as noted in the school's calendar. This concludes staff's presentation. However, we are available for questions along with the town's traffic consultant.
Thank you. So at this point, are there any questions of staff on the report at this point? Okay. We will now open the public portion of the public hearing and give, actually, we will hear from do we hear from the applicant on this? Yeah. So we'll now ask the applicant to speak and have 10 minutes. I have Mark Silver. 5, okay.
Hi, good evening. Mark Silver, head of school at Hillbrook School and also resident of Los Gatos. I'm also joined up here by Chuck Hammers. And we won't take 5 minutes, but we did want to take a moment, first of all, to just, I reflect back 5 years ago, and a number of you were part of that process many years ago, and at the time, we were not certain how this would turn out and, our ability to do this, and we are proud and also as a community that we've managed over the last 5 years to meet the expectations set through the conditional use permit, and particularly around traffic, and also grateful for the way in which we've been able to work with the town to ensure that happens. And so, happy to be back here tonight and answer any questions that you have. I don't know if Chuck has anything he wants to add.
Chuck Hammer is also a resident of Los Gatos at 16230 Shannon, and I'm chair of the board. There were 2 numbers in the report that I just wanted to point out. One was 384 students, and 5 years ago we had a cap of 315, and we have 70 more students, and the school is thriving thanks to the new CUP. And the other number in there is the average car count of 708 daily trips, which we were 880 5 years ago. So we've added a lot of students, and we've taken a lot of cars off the roads, and we're really proud of that. So thank you.
Okay, you have a little more time, but maybe there's some questions as well. Commissioner Birch?
It's more out of curiosity. You had a pretty good bus program planned, and you were going to add more stops. Is that still working really well, and have you added more stops and buses?
Yeah, we do. We have a very active, about 40% of students come in on bus.
Okay.
And so it varies year to year based on where people live and kind of trying to be, we have an amazing transportation coordinator who's very adept at finding stops that work.
Perfect.
So.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? I had one. I believe last year there were some anomalies in the data, and I was wondering if those have washed out, or whether you've taken any other measures to look at some of those anomalies that we had in last year's report.
So I mean, we in the same ways we have done since the beginning, like, obviously you have the town hire somebody to do a report. We also monitor it and keep track and look at video counts. And so, it remains fairly consistent over time. You may have noticed in the report this year, there's actually some days that are high, some days that are low. As Chuck mentioned, our average is well below. Our counts are well below the 880 counts, and so. The system is what the system is. We certainly work with Census to do whatever they suggest to keep it in line.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now invite the public comments, and I have actually one speaker card here. If others would like to speak, please fill out a card. Nancy Durham.
My name is Nancy Jerome. I live at 100 Woolland Way, right next to the gate. And we're very pleased as a neighborhood that this bus program for Hillbrook is working out well. But we do have one question on the construction. It seems like it's been going on for quite a while, and we were wondering if we could get some sort of a timeline on how long the construction is going to take, and we'd appreciate that, because it's not too disruptive to our neighborhood, but we would like to know about how long. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Okay, so now the applicant may come back up for another 5 minutes? 3 minutes, okay. Sorry.
I won't take 3 minutes, but I will answer the question. We are hopeful that it will be done in around mid-February. It has definitely, the rain last year delayed it, but I think we're back on track, and while I know there's some reasons we want more rain this year, we're hoping that the rain holds off a little longer. So, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your nice words about the bus program.
Yeah, if you have other remarks, please just address the commission. So you feel you've addressed that question fully about what you know about the construction and how long it will take?
I believe so.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll now close the public portion of the public hearing and ask if commissioners have any questions of staff. Commissioner Janoff?
Just a minor clarification. In the report and in the statements this evening, the data was presented in terms of an average. I just wanted to clarify that in the CUP item number 19, averages don't really come into the picture in terms of data that would be in or out of compliance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're basically looking for actual dates where there's deviation from that cap that's permitted.
Yes, you're looking at individual traffic counts for each day.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion or questions or comments or motion? Commissioner Badami?
I'm going to try motion. I'm comfortable with the report. We don't have any traffic complaints, so congratulations. So I move to accept the report for conditional use permit application U-12-002, annual review of an approved conditional use permit for Hillbrook School. I can make the required findings for CEQA, and I can make the required findings for compliance with conditional use permit U-12-002.
Do you have a second? Commissioner Birch?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously 6-0. Okay, thank you, and thank you for following up on that report. We'll now move on to item number 4, which is a minor residential development application MR 19011, project location 15960 Rose Avenue, and this is an appeal, so the appellant is Manocher Kodayan, and please correct me when you come up to speak. The applicant is DeMatte Construction. The property owner is David Doctorow and Sarah Munson. And this is to consider an appeal of a community development director decision approving a request for construction of a detached garage exceeding 450 square feet on property zoned R18, APN 410-19018. May I have a show of hands of commissioners who visited the property under consideration? Okay, are there any disclosures? Mr. Safdie, I understand you'll be giving the staff report this evening.
Thank you, Commissioners. Before you is a proposal to construct a 616-square-foot detached garage on a property zoned R1, single-family residential. The project meets zoning code requirements and was approved by the Community Development Director through a minor residential permit on August 26th. The decision of the director was appealed by the neighbor to the south due to concerns related to privacy and accuracy of the plans. The applicant responded in writing to the appellant's concerns, and additional correspondence between the applicant and appellant was submitted and included as exhibits to the staff report and desk item. No plan modifications were made to address the privacy concerns. Based on the discussion provided in the staff report, staff recommends the commission deny the appeal and uphold the Community Development Director's approval of the application, subject to the conditions of approval. And this concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I had one question. In the appeal, there was a concern about the driveway, and the appellant asked that the driveway be removed from his property. Is there any manner in which the appellant would pursue that in front of the Planning Commission, or what would be the mechanism for pursuing something like that?
No, so that would be a civil matter between the two properties, the two owners.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we now ask the appellant to address the commission, and hopefully I got the timing right, 5 minutes, and that will be followed by the applicant, who will also have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Manucher Katkhadayan, and the next door neighbor at 15980 Rose Avenue. When I got the letter from the city, I came down here and looked at the drawing. And by the way, I live right on the right side of the property, and I have a house about 5 feet away from the property line where they're proposing to, I see the drawing back there, where they're proposing to add the secondary unit and the garage. By the way, there's an application in here. Actually, there are two applications. One is for a secondary unit, one is for a garage. I'm not sure which one comes first or second. It doesn't matter, really. At this point, total, I think, Ryan knows better, maybe 1,000, 1,200 square feet or something. But when you look at the drawing, there's a dormer, which is above looking into my yard. And that came to my attention. That's why I brought it up. And then when I was looking at the drawing a little further, I realized that my driveway actually was shown to be encroached, and still is, after about 3 or 4 times back and forth with the city and the planning department. It still shows on the drawing that they're encroaching into my driveway, and I went as far as actually pulling all the records and the deeds and showing that they're not supposed to do that, because in '93 there was an issue about the property line, and at that time there was a quit claim between the 15980 and 15960. That means the 9560 quit claim to the 9580 the right for that area. And apparently I'm not sure why they're still encroaching into that area. So that's one of my biggest issues right now. And I have gone back and forth, and I sent every legal stuff that's possible for the surveyor to look at, and I haven't seen anything back yet, frankly. Contrary to what they had originally, it still shows exactly what it was. But every time they write an email or letter, they said, nothing is going to happen there, and we are not encroaching. So I don't know where to go with that. With that, I'd like to submit, if I may, all the back and forth with the city for the file. I don't know, who should I give it to you? Should I give it to?
You're welcome to provide documentation along with your testimony. There is a cutoff for submitting documents for consideration. We have to look at everything, but the weight that we give to things is commensurate with the amount of time we have to review it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity, by the way, to be here. I do have 5 or 6 copies. It's very simple to show what the encroachment I'm talking about. It's very clear, and I can distribute that if you like. Is that okay if I distribute this? Maybe you can guys.
You also could put it up on the screen if that would work better for you. We can help you with that. We'll hold up the time. Hold on a second.
Not familiar
We'll
with
see if we
someone
get you
can help.
some help on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My driveway goes kind of like this.
Yeah, if you're going to speak there, you might want to take the microphone by hand so that we can have a recording.
This is the driveway going to 15960 Rose Avenue, right from here going up. And my driveway actually goes like this. And this is the area they're encroaching. And I have provided the deed regarding this area as how it works. And it's very clear. There's an area like this that was actually relinquished to 15980 from 15960. And that's in file. You already have it in file. Ryan has it, actually. And then, but as you can see, that black area, they say they're relocating the driveway and they're encroaching into that area. And at one time they said, no, they're not doing any construction. At one time they said, well, it's the way it is. I'm not sure what it is, frankly. I said, well, you may need to stake your survey so we can see where we are in relationship to that. And actually, when I was looking at that, I realized that I asked them that everywhere for this property, they show that there's only 21,000 square feet of net area to be played with. But on the planning, it shows 25 something. And I really got surprised as how that could be happening.
Okay,
So
thank you. There may be some questions, so your time is up, but
Okay, sure.
yes, Commissioner Badami.
You've expressed privacy concerns with
Yes.
the dormer.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question to you is, we have a staff report, and in the staff report, it indicates that the applicant did offer to remove the windows or obscure the glass. So if that was to happen on the south side that overlooks your property, can you elaborate on, if that were to happen, how your privacy would be impacted?
There are a couple of issues here. One is, that's a good way to go for it. But when you look at the whole issue with these drawings, it's not clear at what exactly the pitch of the roof is. I got an email today, and I'm not sure what was going on there, but even if you have a dormer, and if you take the window out now, if they decide to put it back, then I have to deal with that later.
Commissioner Badami?
We're able to put conditions of approval on a project, so if we were to put that in a condition of approval, they would not be able to put the window back in. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah, but they also had a garage, three-car garage that suddenly is not there anymore in last year or two. So, you know, I don't know where to go with this thing, frankly. I
Okay.
work by rules and follow the rules
Okay.
and everything, but I don't want to deal with stuff like that later.
Okay, you
I'd
answered
rather
my,
to do it
sir,
right now and-
sir, you answered my question, so thank you,
So,
thank
yes.
you. Thank
Are
you.
are there
Yes,
other
sir.
questions? I just wanted to ask a question with regard to the encroachment issue. The item that's before us tonight is the construction of a detached garage exceeding 450 square feet. That encroachment, is that where the construction of the garage will occur?
No, actually, the garage is actually, this is,
Please take the microphone, if you don't mind.
sorry. This is, the driveway is right down here, which they're proposing to change some of the driveways here. The garage is half of this. The other half is the secondary unit. And where they're connected, they're putting a dormer above the garage and not above the secondary unit. and there are some issue with the elevation, so if,
Right.
by the
My
way,
question was about the encroachment and
sorry,
and the
it's right here.
location. It seems like you've answered that it's not in the same location as the garage.
No,
is
it's
being-
not.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Now
Thank
the
you very much.
Yeah, now the applicant has 5 minutes, and I have two cards, I believe, Sean Clevenger and Sarah Munson. Is that correct?
Hi, good evening. My name's Sean Clevenger, and I'm with Deemed Take Construction. And I guess a couple of the items, one, the encroachment, we've taken that off the plan, so we're not doing anything with the approach of the driveway. It's going to stay as is and existing. With the respect to the dormer, we've got an 8'6" roughly ceiling height, and the dormer above is to provide storage space, essentially above that. We have obviously gone through and said that we would opaque the window or even omit it from the plans. So I'm not sure in the future what the problem would be. We're above 8 feet, so even, we can't put a second floor in there. I know that was part of the comment in his appeal originally, was that it was a second story and that things could change and be altered, but there's not enough room to put, say, a second floor and then get access to it to view out. So really, the goal of that dormer is just to add a little bit of storage space above the garage unit itself to be able to shuffle boxes that are there for, whatever is needed to be stored, essentially. There was another question of a 30-foot setback of a hillside easement, and that's actually been found within the community records on microfiche, which shows that to be outside of the property line. And that essentially is this section outside over here. At one point, it was thought that it was back on the property line, but it's actually beyond the property line.
Thank you. You still have some more time if you'd like to use it.
No,
Okay.
for questions, thank you.
Perhaps there's some questions. I had one question. There was an issue raised about the height of the height of the roof in that area. What is the height of the roof at that point? Does it, well, my other question really is, does it exceed 15 feet?
Offhand, I'm not sure what the height is. Do you, 15? 15 feet, yeah.
Okay. Because there was a question about matching existing, and
I think that question originally was more matching materials. It wasn't matching the pitch of the roof. We have gone through and changed that. Originally, it was a metal standing seam, and we put that to comp roof, which matches the main house. I know that there's a little bit of slope thing, and we talked about that with the building department or the planning department, and we're considering going with standing seam on just the dormers themselves.
okay, and so you said that the roof does not exceed 15 feet, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, yes, Commissioner Janoff.
Just to back on the dormers, there was one letter in our package that indicated that you would be willing to remove the dormer or obscure the windows. And it sounded like there wasn't a resolution from the appellant for that offer. Is that something you currently, how are the dormers represented in the current plans? Are they there, and are they obscured, or are they gone?
They are there currently.
Both sides?
Yeah, both sides, correct. Just on the garage portion, being that that's where the storage access is for the drop-down ladder. I am not sure offhand if it's shown as obscured or if it's, the window's currently there, but we're willing to go either way with that. We'd like to keep the dormer, obviously, just being that we don't have a lot of storage above. So, and obviously my client's kids have, as most, bikes and so on for everyday sports and such, so.
So if the issue for the neighbor were privacy, and you're willing to obscure the windows, put in frosted glass or whatever might be the case, you would be willing to do that?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We now open this to the public. If anyone else would like to speak on this matter, I don't have any cards. The appellant will have one more opportunity to speak. Since there were no public comments, the applicant now has 3 minutes to address anything else that you'd like to address. No? Okay. So the appellant now has another 3 minutes to address anything that's been raised.
He brought up the issue regarding the roof on a dormer. The dormer itself, above the ceiling, is, I think, what, 2 feet? Not even 2 feet. I don't know how you're going to put a bike up there, frankly.
Sir, if you would please address your comments to us, that would be best.
The space above there is only about a couple of feet. And also there was an issue about the dormer because the roof pitch is only 5-in-1. By the time you're going to put the dormer, it's 1.5 to 12, which is very flat. And now I just heard that they are changing that from a asphalt shingle to match with the rest of the house to a standing seam steel, which is going to look really bad toward my house. And I really don't like to see that. If I may, please look into that to see what the other possibilities are. And regarding the 30-feet easement that he brought up, actually I was going to bring that up, but it didn't matter to me if they took the dormer off. I have gone and checked the deeds. I'm not sure where they got their survey done, but if the surveyor go and pull the deeds out and actually read the description and they plot that 30 feet is on the other side of a property, and if you take that 30 feet and minus it from the 25,000, that's where you get your 21,000 square feet. I'd just like to bring that up, so for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I had one question, and that is, as I asked earlier in this, are you aware that issues over a property line or a survey that you contest or an encroachment are not items that are within the purview of the Planning Commission, that they would be, as advised by staff, would be a civil matter?
Correct. As long as it's on the record, and when it gets to the point that the engineer from the town can look at it, that would be good, because it still has a process to go. It hasn't even gone to the building department yet. So they already talked to the building department regarding the roof pitch, and they're changing the type of the roof, which doesn't make sense to me to have 2 types of roof material on a roof, which is going to look really ugly anyway, to have a 1.5-in-12 slope looking toward the neighbor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I will now close the public portion of the hearing and ask if commissioners have any questions of staff or wish to comment on the application. Okay, any discussion, or would anyone like to venture a motion? Commissioner Badami?
I'm going to make a motion, and that is, I move to deny the appeal of minor residential application MR-19-011 and uphold the decision of the Community Development Director approving construction of a detached garage exceeding 450 square feet. I can make the required findings for CEQA. I can make the required compliance with the residential design guidelines. I would add as a condition of approval that the glass be obscured in the attic dormer facing the south side.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Tavana?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. For Commissioner O'Donnell?
Already, my reason, there it goes. We have said, and I'm not sure it's been received, we cannot deal with the property line question, and I think you're aware of that. So it would not influence our decision this evening. Secondly, on the question of the roof covering, that's not before us tonight either. We don't know. The suggestion was they put the metal seam roof only on, if I understand correctly, the dormers. But that ultimately will have to come before the planning staff, not us. So that's not in our decision either. So there's not an awful lot left, and that's why I believe the motion is correct, which is to deny the appeal. So, thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously, 6-0. Mr. Safdie, are there appeal rights concerning this decision?
There are appeal rights to the council if filed within 10 days of the decision on forms available in the town clerk's office with fees paid.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, everyone, for your testimony on this. We'll now move on to item number 5. Item number 5 is Architecture and Site Application S-19-005, Variance Application V-19-002, and Conditional Use Permit U-19-001. Property location 25 West Main Street, property owner Stephen and Mary Leonardis, applicant Gordon Wong, project planner Aaron Walters. Requesting approval for construction of an addition to a contributing building in the downtown historic commercial district, including variances. First of all, may I have a show of hands from commissioners who visited the property under construction? Okay,
I'm not sure the chair is aware, but I'm going to have to recuse myself.
Yes.
So before we get into this, I would like to do that. As you know, the distance now in which we have would have a potential conflict is at 1,000 feet, and I am apprised that I am within 1,000 feet of this building, so I will now recuse myself. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, and we'll bring you back for the next item. So that was a disclosure, and I think we had everyone signify that they had visited the property. So, Ms. Walters, I understand you'll be giving the report this evening.
Yes, good evening, Planning Commissioners. The site is located in the downtown historic commercial district at the corner of West Main and Park Avenue and is developed with an existing pre-1941 two-story commercial building. The project is being considered by Planning Commission tonight as the applicant is requesting the approval of an architecture and site application for the construction of a two-story rear addition towards the rear of the existing building. The conditional use permit for a multifamily use and a mixed-use project, a variance to exceed the maximum floor area ratio in the C2 zone and to reduce the required driveway length. And lastly, request an exception to the required number of guest parking spaces. The project includes tenant improvements to the existing ground floor commercial space. The proposed two-story addition includes a 3-car garage located behind the commercial space and the addition of 3 multifamily rental units on the second floor. 1 unit is a market rate unit and then 2 below market price units. Given the analysis presented in the staff report, staff recommends approval of the architecture and site application, the conditional use permit, and variance applications, subject to the conditions of approval included in Exhibit 3. And this concludes staff's report. Staff is available along with Public Works staff and the town's traffic consultants to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'll invite the applicant to come forward. And I have a couple of cards, several cards from the applicant, I believe. So just please state your names when you're speaking.
Hello, my name's Gordon Wong. I'm the applicant.
And by the way, you have 5 minutes altogether.
Hi, my name is Kevin, and I'm the designer of this development. And we have one more person.
Ken Anderson, traffic consultant.
We got a quick presentation, and we'd like to just go through the project. We'll summarize it real quickly. On this slide, so what we're showing here is we're improving 1 commercial unit, and we have 3 additional residential units. 2 will be affordable housing with the below market price housing program guidelines. Our goal here is to improve the commercial unit with the accessibility. We are relocating the door. The current door is exiting towards a street or at a street. We're going to move that towards the main walkway We're also including an enclosed trash area and including also improving the a barrier-free unit. All the affordable housing units, including the additional housing unit, has its own enclosed parking garages. Kevin?
And let's see. On the next slide, you can actually see that on the red region. On the next slide, this is the site plan. You can see on the red region, it shows the 10-foot wide street dedication for the public right-of-way. And then you can see that yellow region is proposed sidewalk for the residential. And on the green region, you can see that we dedicated about 435 square feet of common open space. And for this plan, this is floor plan level 1. On the green region, you can see how we renovate the commercial space to be much more usable. There's 88 bathroom and enclosed trash enclosure. And for the yellow shaded region, you can see the circulation and the entry for all 3 residential units. On the red region shows the 3-car parking garages. And this is the floor plan level 2. And you see on the legend that the green region shows the open space. In the middle is the common open space shared between all 3 units. And for the purple region shows the studio unit, which is for 404 square feet. This is known for the per BMP program. And for the blue shaded region, you see it's a bedroom unit, which is about 562 square feet. And the red shaded region shows the bedroom unit is 696 square feet.
Okay, so moving forward, we try to be really transparent about what we're putting together here. We worked pretty thoroughly with the HPC committee, trying to interpret what is the historical significance of this building. We found quite a few. We've done the double hung windows, siding. We've matched the roof pitch. We did a study on that. We have the garages. We're going to do a barn style, and we went and researched a book called The Garage Re-Innovated to put together a facade that matches. We are also reusing the original street facade design of the commercial unit. So we were able to find a photograph of the original store that was there with the lady in front and got to talk to her, and we found this store was on the left side, so we put that back to originally where it is. We're using the existing windows. Shed roofs on the roof only because it matches the current roof slopes. Kevin?
And on this slide, we're asking for an exception to reduce parking spaces. Per Cities of Los Gatos requirement that we need 12 parking spaces. And we're proposing 10 parking spaces, 3 for the on-site garage and 7 for the additional parking per parking assessment district. And this development is asking for the reduction of 2 parking spaces, and it's justified as the residential units are located in the pedestrian-friendly downtown, and within the 0.5 radius, there's 10 transit stops.
Why don't we move forward to traffic? We brought Ken Anderson here today to explain our justifications for the traffic. Okay.
Real quick, the project does require a variance for driveway length. We were asked to investigate the safety aspects of that. These are examples of other places in the community that have similar reduced driveway length. Go to the next one. 2 things we discovered. One, because of the width of park and the size of the driveways, full-size vehicles would have trouble backing in and out. That was rectified by widening the driveway door.
Thank you. There may be some questions. I suspect there might be.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I do have a few questions, so if you don't mind. I wanted to understand about the parking situation. I understand that that's one of the major issues leading to variance and asking for not only a reduction in guest parking, but also shortening the driveway significantly. What other alternatives did you look at with regard to parking configuration?
So with the parking configuration, One of the difficulties was it's the existing building that is creating that. It's placed in an area where it needs more parking than it was given. So what we tried to do is reduce the square footage of the actual building itself by pushing the trash enclosure in, getting the restrooms inside, and enclosing all the parking we could. We know that there's 7 parking spaces that are available, and it's dedicated through that.
So 7 of the parking spaces are pretty much dedicated to the parking assessment district. And
Yeah, so what our goal is to actually reduce the amount of parking that the commercial unit uses, is what our goal was.
So if I could be specific, did you look at other configurations like tandem parking entering from the south side of the building, or parallel parking and eliminating a space, or angled parking, or other things that might mitigate the difficulty with the short driveway?
Correct, yeah, we tried another parking where the open space is. We tried the tandem and the short parking, and this seemed to be the most efficient way because if we were to try another configuration, it was an issue with getting out of there easier, and also the site itself had some slope limitations.
So none of those would work, even if you reduce the number?
Correct, we tried 3 variations, and this one made the most sense. Yeah, we have them, we've submitted them before and went through like a review on it.
Okay. This may be a question for the traffic consultant. Maybe you could explain to us the constraint you were dealing with and what alternatives you looked at and how you arrived at that, because it's a very different kind of a situation with a very, very short approach to the parking. And maybe you could explain your solution and why you think that'll work as well.
Let me give some backup. Driveway depth is created so that you can back out, see beyond the obstacle, your garage, see traffic coming. In this case, the limitation we have is the width of park in the area and the position of the building itself. And from a sight distance standpoint, a full-size vehicle is about 19 feet long. Will extend into the street somewhat, about 10 feet by the time your line of sight comes out of the garage and you can see up and down the street. What we looked at there was the speed of the road and how far you can see from a sight distance standpoint, and what you can see is adequate for 10 to 15 miles an hour, which we believe to be the prevailing speed in that area. But to reinforce that idea that someone could be coming, we've added the flasher and the warning sign that would be activated by the door. We looked at, it's kind of an unusual situation, we looked at other things to call attention to the door, to slow down traffic, a speed table, as it were, that motorists coming by would see that feature and know that something was going on. And the treatment we have with the flasher and the sign, we, the city's consultant and staff, felt that was the best way to inform other people on the road that there is something there to pay attention to.
And have you dealt with a similar situation where you have a street with virtually no setback to the garage like that?
We have, the situation is common for parking garages where you come out, pedestrians are there, those types of things. I've been around them on private property in condominiums is more common. It's rare on a public street to be like this, but it happens fairly frequently on private property and townhouse condominium projects.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay. You'll have another opportunity after the public. So I have 2 cards. The first card is Shari Flick, and then followed by Karen Delaney. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sherry Flick. I own the property next door to this project at 21 and 23 West Main. That's Tangle Salon and Craft Box. And then the back of my building is 9 and 11 Park Avenue. So I'm speaking to you tonight because of the following concerns I have with the design of the project. My first issue is with the drainage of the property. The grading and drainage plan on page C2 shows the downspouts and trench drains from the Park Avenue side of the building, all draining into a 12 by 12 inch bubbler box in the middle of the permeable pavers. This is in the community area near my driveway, which then will supposedly drain into the soil, which is 8 to 10 feet above my driveway. The soil is clay. It clearly will not percolate down. It will just run onto my driveway and will push my drainage system beyond its capacity. There's also no plan for the water coming off the back sloped roof, which will hit my building and its electrical box, and again, flood my property and potentially flood my garage. This is completely inadequate. I propose that the new part of the building should have a flat roof, draining towards Park Avenue with a drainage system to Park Avenue. There are many flat roofs nearby, including my building. My second issue is with the height of the building, looking at it from the back side of my property. In looking at the elevations on page A201 of the plans failed to include the proposed retaining wall. The foundation of the proposed building is shown at a 0 grade elevation, but that's really at the top of the retaining wall. I believe the proposed wall is 10 feet high, so it would add 10 feet to the elevation on the plans. The net effect is the building would be 33 feet high, the equivalent of a 3-story building. My third issue is with the new retaining wall itself. I'm concerned with protecting the drainage system I have installed behind my retaining wall. My drainage system was designed to eliminate hydrostatic pressure with a 16-inch wide path of drain rock, a perforated pipe, and filter fabric. The system cannot be compromised, as my wall was engineered to have that drainage system. To build a new wall within 2 to 3 feet of mine, they will have to leave the drainage system untouched, which is unlikely, or take it out and replace it. Thank you for your time and attention to my concerns.
Thank you. Are there questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, Karen Delaney.
Hello, Karen Delaney, 109 Teresita Way. 3 points. First, why is the report by the applicant's traffic consultant not included in the public packet? Instead, we get summaries of 2 main issues. Are there minor and secondary issues? If you dig into the public materials, you'll see that the traffic consultant determined, quote, normal access by standard vehicles may be difficult without making a 2-point turn. Exiting the site is possible, although the standard vehicle does overhang the Park Avenue curb. Drivers should back into their garage. In other words, the summaries and the diagram provided by the planning department assume that cars back out. The traffic consultant's report recommends cars backing in. Point 2. For the other main issue, the inadequate sight distance between exiting and approaching cars, is there no required report covering how many vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists will be impacted by the 2-point turns, the backing in, the backing out, the backing in, the backing out, the backing in, and the backing out? According to the TPC 2017 parking count, the 41-space lot that Park Avenue feeds into has no vacancies half the time. 83% occupancy the other half. I counted 28 additional private spaces off of Park. Tacking up all of Vasona's fantasy of lights to the garage entrances does not mitigate the safety issues here. Point 3. When did inclusion of below market rate units allow the Planning Commission to override long-standing, well-defined code requirements? Our town council has publicly considered ways to expand BMR, BMP opportunities. Yes, but that support is in the context of code amendments, as was done with ADUs that can be fairly and equally applied. Vote to deny. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? I had a question on your last point. I wonder if you could further explain it. What are you saying with regard to the BMP and code variances or changes?
Mm-hmm. Well, at the town council's public meetings, as well as in the town council's response to the Santa Clara County Grand Jury report on Density is Destiny, the housing crisis in Silicon Valley, the emphasis is on code amendments that provide opportunities for all builders to propose multi-unit projects that have BMP units. In this case, the applicants are asking for very special consideration that increases the number of BMP units by 2, provides no precedent. That is contrary to what the town council has said and is outside of the scope of the discretion of the Planning Commission.
And could you be specific about how it is outside of the scope and also in contrary to what has been said?
Well, my understanding of the Planning Commission's discretion is that it does not decide policy issues. What the town council's discussions of affordable housing in town, and specifically of BMP units, means that this is a policy issue that is still something that the town council is trying to work through, and that the Planning Commission does not have discretion to take that into consideration and grant the driveway variance, all because they're BMP units.
I see, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you. I have no other cards. If anyone else would like to speak on this? Okay. The applicant has another time, I believe 3 minutes, to respond or to further describe your project.
Yeah, apologies for all the difficult concerns. This is a pretty challenging project with the site it's located, but I felt I took it on because I still felt it's a pretty good project. With the storm drain and the drainage system, we've put quite a bit of thought into it. We have our civil engineer with LC Engineering is Nin Lee, and he's done quite a few projects that are on pretty steep grades, and this one is a project that should be pretty walk in the park for him. I do understand the concerns of the retaining wall. If you walked down there and saw the neighbors area, we'd be more than happy to work with them to, explain how we plan on doing it, what makes them feel comfortable, make sure that the water is going the correct directions, especially with the downspouts of the roof. I'm more than open to working with them on that and explaining anything further about it. We do have the water being piped away to not impact in the current areas and the retaining walls that were already there. We do have a soils report that suggests grade beams and piers to go down in the appropriate areas to make sure that we have full stability of the site, and also including the height of the building. We are going to match the existing height of the existing building. In the back area, we're only going a foot taller. That's probably the lowest building in that current area. It may feel higher because of the grade drop in the back where the neighboring property is, and that's where I'd be more than happy to work with them. Any questions, concerns about the affordable housing units? Our office felt in support of what the client was hoping for because of the location, pedestrian-friendly area, the ability for getting, I think there's quite a few areas they can use public transportation. All the amenities are in the correct location, so more than happy to express what the intent is with this project. I'll try to meet with them after the meeting, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Other points you'd like to make?
Really, just 2 points. One, the comment about the backing maneuver, the report deals with the original plan that had 8-foot garage opening, and the 2-point turn was because of that. The wider door takes care of that issue. And then 2, the conflicts with pedestrians and other traffic. The normal mathematics for a single-family residence like that would be 1 car an hour accessing each door. So the amount of conflict is relatively minimal.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Birch.
This is for the traffic engineer. I want to make sure I'm clear on what you're saying, because you were stating that the original study had to do if it was a typical width of the garage door. I'm looking at page A101, and it appears, when you look at the garage, that about every 9 feet, there's a column, and I think I'm looking at that correctly. So we do have about an 8-foot wide opening for the car entrance. So are you stating that with this configuration, because there are these columns between the garages, there's no ability to do a wide swing in? You're still confined to the angle you can enter the drive or the garage?
Back of the door? Okay.
So, based on my experience, is that means we still are somewhat limited on the access of a standard SUV, right? If somebody's driving one, on the turn angle they could get into this. Do you still feel that that means someone could turn onto the street and make an easy left, or are we still looking at someone pulling in, back, and then into the garage?
If it were a Suburban, the full-size thing, with this configuration here, the easier answer would be to, neither is particularly good. The backing maneuver would be easier for a full-size vehicle like that.
Okay.
It's important to understand that vehicle is 5 to 6 feet longer than what most people drive.
Okay. Can I ask one more question of the
Of course.
applicant?
Yeah.
Is your civil engineer here today? Not today, no. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple of questions. As you know, this came before the Historic Preservation Committee, I believe, 2 or 3 times, and there was a lot of discussion about preserving the character of this building, being one of the few false front buildings in town remaining when we know that there were a number of them, and retaining that roof, retaining pretty much everything about that front structure. So I had really 2 questions about historic preservation that they may sound like details, but I think they're pretty important considering how important that building is. One is with regard to the windows. I was there looking again in detail, and I'm not an expert in this, but it seems like on the double-hung windows, the side rails, the vertical rails, have a tail on them that extends beyond the frame. That's not unique, but it's specific to that period. Will those windows be retained? And where you're replicating windows to match, will you be retaining that type of detail in those windows?
Yes, that's correct. And we've worked with the window vendor to help us match, and we actually brought a actual physical window to one of the HPC meetings, and it's sitting in my office, but it shows that level of detail, and they're wooden. They're wood windows.
Okay. The other question I had was about the color, I believe. What's your intention on the color?
Our intention on the color is to, we know that there's an art mill out there. We've got to repaint that for sure. We did have an original picture of the building, so we went with we don't have the picture on us right now, but our intent was to go back to that era.
I think I drew it the wrong way. It's on the inside.
Your drawing is 9.6 in the opening.
Correct, correct.
She thinks it's 9.
She thinks it's 9 with the columns. That's what I was trying to tell you. Yeah, because it's a wider opening, right? Yeah. Do you have it? No, it's the one that Steve gave us. He texted him my.
Did you understand my question, or would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, I think maybe give me that one more time.
Okay, so what is your intention on the color, given the historical context of the building?
So we have a photo of the original building. We were trying to go back to that, like the same siding, the same color, the same trim, the thicknesses, and so forth, like the window types. I found the seam line in the building facade where the original door is. We're going to go back to that.
Okay, I am concerned about the color, and let me explain why. I believe in the documentation that you've submitted, it says to match existing color. However, when you look at the existing color on the side of the building, there's red and blue and orange and other colors. So which color are you intending to match?
So you're talking about the art mural, which is not what we're going to match. We'll match the drawing or the picture from the original building, and I will color match that with like a Kelly Moore paint or something, or a brand of a paint. It's not going to be a multicolor. It's going to be one color, and the trim is going to be one color.
Okay, thank you. I was concerned about that because it wasn't clear from the conditions, I think, say to match existing or something like that, or your application says match existing. Are there other questions? I had two questions because I want to be really clear about the record on this. I'd like you to just state the justification for exceeding the FAR, and also the justification for a variance on the required parking. Why isn't there? Why do you request a reduction to 2 guest spaces specifically?
So we actually did some findings, and we look around the neighborhood properties, and within the 500 feet of the development, we found that there's 13 existing development that have FAR exceeding the C2 zoning requirement, which is 0.6, and 4 of the properties actually have FAR, which exceeds our proposed FAR, which is 1.38. And one of the reasons why we have such a high FAR is we're providing 10-foot street dedication to the public right-of-way, and which is about 261 square feet. And at the same time, we're trying to utilize and maximize the amount of space we can from the lot. For example, which is the 3 housing units and the parking garages, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. And on the parking, you're requesting a reduction to, I believe, 2 guest parking spaces, when more are required. What is the justification for the reduction in parking?
You want to go with it? I have the photo of the historical building. If anyone's interested.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. I'd be interested to hear this answer first.
To answer your question, parking was always an issue that we were kind of aware of, and because, as there are more developments, for example, you have really large firms like Google and other companies trying to create new jobs, and you have a lot of people trying to look for housing or places to live, and that's why it creates a lot of parking issues because there's more cars. And we understand that the existing commercial unit, which right now is not being used, and we always spoke with the parking assessment district, in which they provide 7 parkings, and 3 will be provided for the residential, and that's probably might be the best we could do for now, but we're always looking forward to improve the parking, and with the exception to reduce the 2 parking spaces for guests. We also justified that this area, the neighborhood, is pedestrian friendly, and we're trying to promote, people to use the transit stops and, go on bus, walk around the downtown, biking, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll close the
So
public.
through the chair, I just want to note that we do have Parks and Public Works if there are questions about the drainage, which
Okay.
were not able to be addressed to the applicants.
Okay,
So,
and we will
thank-
be closing the public portion of the hearing, so there may very well be some questions about that. Commissioner Badami.
I have 2 questions, if I may, and actually, the public testimony brought up some concerns that I would like staff to answer. And one is, there was a traffic report that was done by KD Anderson. Shouldn't it have been included in our report so that we could review it as well?
So I think we'll look to Parks and Public Works for that as well, but typically, the traffic reports are not included, the technical reports such as that would not be included in a staff report. They're certainly available for the public to review.
Okay, so we can ask, if this item, for example, was to be continued, we can ask for a copy of that report at a future hearing?
Yes.
Okay, and then my second concern was also the drainage and grading, because I'm not sure I feel comfortable with that. So if we could hear from staff on that, so that we could have a better understanding of how that works per Ms. Flick's testimony.
Good evening, Mike Weiss, Associate Engineer. Yeah, the current proposal for the development shows disconnected downspouts going towards the open space area south of the property, or south of the building, towards a bubbler box structure, which ultimately also allows for positive drainage into the right-of-way. In the instance that any water would go into the right-of-way, there is a drain inlet at the end of Park Avenue, at the end of the parking, the perpendicular parking at the end of the street. So in the instance that any drainage would go out of the bubbler box structure and the permeable paver area, which also allows for infiltration with its base material, water would go into the right-of-way, down the street towards the south, and into an inlet for collection.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could also mention on condition 45, there, among other Parks and Public Works conditions, does address drainage and requires the drainage to be properly designed.
Thank you.
Maybe I could just ask a question. Were there concerns raised in public testimony that raised new information, or concerns that hadn't been considered in the original analysis?
No, previous iterations of the plans indicated downspouts in different locations, but with coordination with staff, that was revised to the plans that are shown now.
Okay, thank you. Other questions of staff? I had a few. Yeah, Commissioner Birch.
I just had a quick one in understanding with the garage and the limited access for the cars. I know that we do have some instances where we actually have driveways that are cut short because the garage is right up to the street, like in alleyways. But usually those alleyways, the ones I'm thinking of anyways, feel quite wide in comparison to this space. So how did we, in reviewing this and knowing there's a lot of people with larger vehicles in the town, how did we determine that we didn't feel that there would not be a safety issue in a larger vehicle trying to back in and out, or backup of traffic, or just I just want to understand your recommendation of approval and how you got there.
Yeah, so in the town, there are different alleyways, and they have varying widths. Some are wider, some are narrow than Park Avenue, but our traffic consultant, Chris Kinsel from TJKM, is here to answer any questions related to that.
Good evening. The applicant's traffic engineer who spoke earlier submitted a traffic report. I was asked by the city to peer review that, which I did, made some comments on this very subject, and in their report and the subsequent design was modified to reflect our concerns. I think the biggest thing is the most garages have a width of 8 feet, many of them at the narrowest point of the driveway, and that makes it tight, and you have to go slowly in and out and that sort of thing. And it's more difficult for many people to back into the width of that amount. So we recommended a much wider door, 9.5 feet, and so that allows, and that's a part of the project now, that allows the either the backing in or the backing out to be done not only easier for the driver and more quickly, but also the maneuvering that would normally have to wait till the car is entirely out of the garage can begin to turn while you're still in that wider driveway. The other concern was, how about the people driving down the street that you're backing into? And so we recommended, and I think that will probably be the ultimate disposition, that there be flashing lights activated by the garage doors when they're going up or going down, and a sign that says "Watch for traffic." This is specifically for oncoming traffic and going either from Main Street or toward Main Street. And also when you back out, you're able to clear the sidewalk. The pedestrians will be across the street where the sidewalk is, opposite the garage, and that sidewalk walkway goes all the way back to the rear of the property, past the other parking stalls. So it wasn't a good, ideal situation, but we tried to make the best of it, and I think we wound up with a safe situation, considering the volume of traffic on the street and going in and out of the garage.
Okay, thank you.
Just the information that you've provided, was that information provided in the packet to the public, or was that in the technical part of the traffic report?
That information is in your staff report, essentially in the discussion of traffic, the variance driveway length on page 7 of the staff report. So I was going to note that these technical reports are analyzed and summarized by Parks and Public Works staff as well as planning staff in your staff report.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I had a couple of questions about the justifications because I've only seen a few of these applications. With regard to the FAR, the FAR, the justification that was offered was that there were, I believe, 4 properties within 500 feet that had a similar or even greater exceeding of the FAR. First of all, my question is 500 feet the appropriate measure these days? And the second part of that is, how does this fit in the context of other justifications for exceeding FAR that we've seen?
Thank you. Located in the downtown, there isn't an immediate neighborhood as we see with residential and the residential design guidelines specifically. So we don't have a maximum or minimum threshold with regard to looking at immediate neighborhood. But the applicant, as well as just looking at the patterns of the downtown within this area, there are 3 other properties that are over the 1.38 FAR. So that is what was analyzed as along this corridor. That is what exceeds the proposed project.
So you're basically saying that that's consistent with the way that we look at FAR, exceeding FAR, and justifications for that?
For the downtown historic area, yes.
Right, okay. Second question is the justification for reducing the guest parking, the reduction of 2 guest parking spaces. I'm not sure I completely followed the applicant's justification for that. Is staff aware of the justification for eliminating the guest parking requirement? And is that consistent with other projects of a similar nature?
Yes, the justifications provided was access to public transit stops as well as a walkable, friendly downtown. So the idea is that you would need as many parking spaces, guest parking spaces, as you would be walking or using public transit. And that is something that has been utilized for other properties downtown.
And the commission might note on previous projects that this is an exception and not a variance for the guest parking, and you've seen this before. It's up to the deciding body, in this case the commission, as to whether or not that is appropriate, and they can grant that.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions of staff? Discussion? Starting point? Commissioner Birch?
Well, I know since I am also sitting on the General Plan Advisory Committee, there's a lot of discussion about the lack of housing. We're quite behind on our numbers, in particular when we take a look at below market. And in some of our last discussions has been a very positive conversation about the addition to apartment units over some of the businesses downtown, which is a very, I think to the town, a very attractive thing. It does create more people milling around downtown, a little bit more activity. This is the first project since having those discussions that I've seen that kind of model what we've been talking about. And while I am not always keen on a number of variances, I do feel like the ones that have been put in front of us have good justification. If we are trying to promote a work-live downtown, that means fewer cars out on the road all the time. So I could see encouraging visiting by walking or biking. It's very close to the trail. I don't have a problem with that. I feel more at ease in understanding the traffic situation and that it was analyzed that if we do have the wider garages, people will need to be careful. Somebody's going to hit those columns. I hope you put something really sturdy wrapped around those columns because they're going to get hit. I do have a little bit of concern about the drainage. I do understand what you've got going on back here. There still is a bit of a variance between the two properties. If there was a large rain and an overflow, I could see that it could become a problem to the neighbor. I would obviously look to the design team to be very, very attentive to that particular detail. We do know the rains we got a couple years ago, and I hate to see issues with beautiful historic buildings downtown. That is my long-winded way of saying I would support this project because I think this is where the goals that we've been laying out in the general plan for 2040, this is what that is. I think we have to be careful as we do this. Obviously, other people are going to watch, see what we allow. We need to be attentive to it, but I think, to me, this is a good first step in that direction.
Commissioner Janoff?
Echoing the comments of Commissioner Birch, almost word for word, this is a really good example, I think, of what the General Plan Advisory Commission has been talking about and what we hope to see more of in the coming years. And the general plan is for 2040, so that's a 20-year span of time that we'll be looking to increase the density, add smaller units, be creative about the parking, and try to make these more creative solutions work for purposes of housing. I greatly appreciate that the square footage that you're proposing is, by most standards, extremely small. By San Francisco city dwelling standards, they're not so small. So I appreciate the thinking that goes into being more outside the box in terms of what Los Gatos has grown to expect. I can also see that the parking, though challenging, it's not a whole lot different from what I'm experiencing, parked between two SUVs trying to get out of a whole Whole Foods parking space. You got to be careful. And I know a parking lot is different from a street, but there's a general awareness that when your parking situation is tight, you have to be careful and aware. I do feel the concerns about the neighbor are justified in terms of the drainage and other concerns, particularly when I hear that someone has gone to the extent of having an engineered wall and an engineered solution to their drainage in a challenging location. I would like to see that the applicant not just work with the town and its engineers to make sure that you have a system that works for your parcel, but that it's complementary or works with your neighbors as well. So I'm not sure whether that needs to be part of the conditions of approval or whether that's standard practice. I'm not sure, but that's just really, it's prudent on everyone's part, because if there's a problem down the road, you might be liable for having to correct a problem that you're causing on a neighbor property. So with that said, I too will be in support of this project tonight.
So I would just, Commissioner Badami?
I would also be in support. I was on the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee when we heard this back November of 2018, and we liked the idea of the BMP units, which were sorely lacking in town. I understand the work-live mentality of the downtown. I work downtown, and the walkability is a great amenity of our town. So I would also be in support of the application.
Okay, I would just add one comment, and that is about the historic nature of the building and the importance of that building to downtown. I know from experience in working with the applicant as they modified significantly the proposal to incorporate many ideas from the community and ones that actually originated with the Historic Preservation Committee, that they're listening. I would encourage as well, going forward, should this project be improved, that the applicant look for additional ways to preserve the details of this, as well as the overall feel of this, as I know decisions get made all the time as you get into construction. It would be a huge loss for this building to look different than it does today, and as the plans are to change relatively little of it. In fact, from a historic perspective, I think restoring the entrance to the side that was documented, even though I love the charming entrance on the corner, that appears not to be historic. And so I think that those type of decisions as they're made would be very important to make, as this is one of the few buildings with the false front and has a look of a true 1800s Western town in a spot that everyone sees. So it's a very important location. I would also just add some comments about the safety issues that were raised with regard to parking, entrance, and egress, and the retaining wall and the potential runoff issue from that. I'm not expert enough to really understand the technical details beyond what I get in a report and questions that I can ask and testimony that I can receive. And I would, again, encourage any issues to be worked out with staff where we have the technical expertise to do that, so that there are no safety issues with regard to those two issues that I mentioned. So with that, I'll be maybe asking for a motion. It'll be a little bit long because there are several items, so.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Rather, this is like 2 pages of findings. In my motion, am I allowed to just simply reference the findings as shown in Exhibit 2? That would be great. Okay, thank you. So I will venture a motion here. I am going to move that we approve architectural and site application S-19-005 variance application V-19-002, and conditional use permit U-19-001, property located at 25 West Main. I can make the findings as shown in Exhibit 2 of the staff report. And I do not think we had any additions to the motion that we wanted to make, other than I will simply make a generic statement that, as I stated, you're one of the first that's coming in under this, so we will be watching you very closely. So please take good care of this.
Second, Commissioner Janoff.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0 unanimously. Thank you very much. And are there appeal rights on this item?
Yes, there are, to the town council on forms and with fees paid in the town clerk's office within 10 days of the decision.
Okay, thank you. We do have 2 more items tonight. Maybe we should take a break. Let's take a 5-minute break before continuing. So we'll Convene the Planning Commission meeting now. So if we could get started, please. We will now move on to item number 6, which is architecture and site application S-19-017, project location 15921 Linda Avenue, applicant Darrell Harris, property owner Firouz Benamfar, requesting approval for demolition of an existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence with reduced setbacks on non-conforming property zoned R18, APN 523-25-022. First of all, may I have a show of hands from commissioners who visited the property? Any disclosures? Okay. Mr. Mullen, I understand you'll be giving the staff report on this one.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Before you tonight is a request for demolition of an existing residence and construction of a new residence with reduced setbacks on non-conforming property at 15921 Linda Avenue. The subject property is non-conforming by width, having a width of 54 feet where 60 is required by the town code. The code also allows for modification of any rule of the zone for non-conforming lots, including setback requirements, if found to be compatible with the neighborhood. The applicant proposes a new residence with a reduced side yard setback of 5 feet for portions of both side yards, where 8 feet is required. The remaining portions of the residence would meet or exceed all required setbacks. In evaluating requests for reduced setbacks, the setbacks of residences in the immediate neighborhood and extended neighborhood are reviewed to determine if the request is compatible with the neighborhood. In this case, no residences with reduced setbacks were found in the immediate or extended neighborhood. Therefore, the project is being considered by the Planning Commission to determine whether the proposed reduced setbacks are compatible with the neighborhood as required by the town code. The project was reviewed by the town's consulting architect, who made several recommendations related to building design, and the applicant has addressed each recommendation as summarized in your staff report and the attached project plans. Staff recommends denial of the architectural and site application based on concerns related to the compatibility of the reduced side yard setbacks with the neighborhood. Should the commission find merit in the request, the commission can consider alternative actions as detailed on pages 7 and 8 of your staff report. This concludes staff's presentation, and we are available to answer any questions.
Questions? I had one question regarding the looking at the neighborhood for comparable situations. You noted that there were no ones that you saw with a reduced setback of this magnitude. How about the width of the lots that you looked at? Were they, again, 54-foot width type of situations? And the second thing related to that was it appears that they are attempting to do a single story instead of a two-story. And, you know, in looking at the comparables, did you find other single stories that had to deal with narrow constraints?
We did look throughout the neighborhood and found two properties, happen to be in the immediate neighborhood, so just a couple sites away, with non-conforming widths of 58 and 56 feet. They're discussed in the staff report. Both of those homes are have recently been constructed. I think one, without looking at the report, is roughly 2001, and one is much more recent, 2015, 2017. Those are two-story homes. They did meet the required 8-foot setback, but they are on reduced width lots, or substandard width lots, to answer the first question. The second question, we looked primarily for evidence of just the reduced setback, and we didn't do an evaluation of whether there were one-story situations that had reduced setbacks, because we didn't find any other reduced setbacks within a reasonable distance of the property.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I would invite the applicant to come forward, and let me make sure I got the right card here. So that's Firouz Benamfar. I wonder if you could speak a little closer to the microphone, or maybe.
Okay, so hi and good evening. My name is Firuz Behnamfar. I'm representing my wife Arzu, who's outside as well. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. My son was born almost 2 years ago, and we love Los Gatos. At the time we used to live in San Jose, but we came here quite often, and and 2 years ago, we thought, okay, it's time for us to move to Los Gatos because it's very family friendly, it's beautiful, and it has great schools. So we are quite excited about moving to Los Gatos area. When we submitted our application, we were instructed to go and talk to our neighbors and describe our plans. So that's what we did. During our visits, we described our plans in detail. We took all the plans and showed to our neighbors, literally door to door. And we made sure that we specifically talk about the reduced setbacks. So that's what we did to everybody. Our neighbors were very nice. They often invited us to their houses, and they all supported our plans, including the reduced setbacks. In fact, 2 of the neighbors offered to come here tonight to speak in front, and express their support for us. We just didn't want to bother them in a weekday evening. We have provided a letter of support, which is signed by 10 of our neighbors. 2 of our other neighbors also verbally said that they would support us. All of the neighbors agreed that our front elevation with reduced setbacks are consistent with the neighborhood, given the fact that we are the narrowest lot on Linda Avenue, and also this is only a single-story house. Using 8-foot setback will essentially make the house very garage-centric. Garage will be the prominent factor, if of the front elevation, and that's against the recommendations of the town's consulting architect. Moreover, if we use the 8-foot setbacks, we will be the only house on Linda Avenue that is so narrow. So that would be inconsistency on Linda Avenue as well. I also wanted to point out that we are actually increasing the setbacks. So the current setbacks on the property are only 3.6 feet. So we're going from 3.6 to 5. The project is really for our own use. We are not builders. We are not looking to sell this property. We are going to build this for our own use, and also to raise our son. So we're really hoping that you would support our plan. So in the interest of time, I will now let my architect, Daryl, to address the technical aspects of the project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there more presentation or?
Good evening, Daryl Harris, RH Associates Architects. Just only to mention and follow up on that is that when I met with the clients, Firuz and his family, about a year ago, this property was actually not annexed yet into the city or the town. It was part of the unincorporated area. As you can see from this diagram here, all the dark gray area, that's still unincorporated area. At that time, and in this zones, and all that dark area, in the county, 5-foot setbacks are allowed. That's what the zones for that, so all that surrounding area would be. And if we can, there we go. So as you had this in your packet to show the compatibility, as Firuz was explaining, with being able to have the 5-foot setback, we'll be able to have a width that would be standard on a minimal lot in this zone, which is 60 feet, with 8-foot setbacks would be the 44, and we're doing the 5-foot setbacks on a 54-foot lot. So the compatibility seems to be there because it's providing a facade that is compatible and similar to other homes in this zone. The amount that we're asking for, as I think it was pointed out too, it's highlighted in yellow there. We're just asking for that narrower setback in the front portion to give that more compatible facade for this neighborhood and this zone. So we'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there questions? Yes, Commissioner Birch.
So typically, to provide a variance, there has to be some pretty extenuating circumstances, such as we are doing a particular type of setback because there's an oak tree there that we don't want to remove, or something like that. I understand, that it's better than it was, but essentially when you demolish a house and you rebuild, we don't compare to the old, we look at what the new guidelines are.
Sure.
So I'm curious, because just sitting here looking at the floor plan and understanding some of the constraints, I feel like this could actually just be brought in and reworked a little bit to meet the setbacks. So I'd like to understand what you went through.
So through the chair, I just want to insert that it's actually not a variance, that the code does allow, and as you've seen before, on a non-conforming lot, any rule of the zone can be changed. So that's actually allowed by the code without a variance. So it's don't have to make the same findings as for a variance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I still ask,
Yeah,
though,
please.
what he went through to get to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I just would like to understand as you were doing
Right.
the design.
Sure. Well, I think, again, the client would like a one-story home. So number one, I think we're being quite minimizing the bulk and mass of the house in this regard. So to get the extra width is an advantage to, again, I think can be compatible with the kind of the rhythm and the sizes of other homes in this zone, as we talked about, where the normal width on a 60-foot would be a 44-foot wide house, which what we're asking for. The other thing that I think Bruce made an excellent point about architecturally, which is a negative if we were to narrow it down, is the garage, because the garage has widths we can't be arbitrary on. We would all of a sudden start to make the garage more prominent on the front elevation, which is a big negative. So allowing this allows us to more proportionally set the facade. I think, again, that's in a better rhythm and context to your neighborhood. And instead of making that garage pop out so much in a much more narrow and out-of-scale home.
Okay, thank you.
As a follow-up to that, I was wondering whether you considered a tandem garage perhaps in order to meet the 8-foot required setbacks?
Yeah, I don't know that we really gave it much consideration. If you have a two-car family, it just doesn't function. You may allow them, but tandems really, I don't feel function very well. So that was not a choice that we were hoping to have to select.
Okay, thank you.
Back behind. Yeah.
Other
So
questions?
if I may add to that. So there's actually a house on the neighborhood that does have a tandem garage. The problem with that is, like, the current house actually is like that. But then that will make the actual house, even narrower. And then because we want it to be a single-story house, the house that I'm talking about is a two-story. We want it to be a single-story, which essentially means that because we have to allow the driveway to go all the way to the back of the right.
Tandem's just the two behind each other in the same garage, not necessarily in the back.
Right. So, but essentially what happens is we will have to move the entire building even, further to the backyard. So it's, what remains from the backyard would be even smaller than what it is.
Right, so the trade-off is in the backyard. Okay.
And through the chair, just to clarify as well, with regards to required parking for single-family residences, a tandem garage wouldn't meet the required parking because it's not allowed to be in that configuration. You either need to be side-by-side. It does not need to be covered, but it would need to be side-by-side. And the dimensions of a garage, the required dimensions, are pretty inflexible, that there needs to be a 20 by 20 foot clear space. So that's the dimensions that the architect was speaking towards.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Badami.
I'm looking at one of the neighboring properties, and that's the address of 15951.
Right.
And it's 56 feet wide, so there's a difference of 2 feet compared to the 54, but they met the setbacks.
They went two-story and to get what they needed, and that made it feel a little maybe more mass and bulk that was more compatible. And again, you'll notice that on the list that Farouz actually gained, he talked to those two people, and both of them are in full support of this approach. So obviously from the neighborhood, the neighbors feel that this is something that's very much appropriate to their neighborhood.
We have to determine.
No, you do, but I'm
because
sure
we-
if they were hearing complaint, you would have a different feeling than if they felt that it complied and that they look forward to having it added to their neighborhood.
At a later date, you could apply for a 2-story. So the fact that you have a 1-story, you could add on at a later date. So the fact that it's,
I don't think so. I think
well, we don't know that. The
Gloria.
property could be sold. And
In terms of FAR, we have maxed it out, and the other thing is we don't want 2-story house. Essentially, this is a house that we did think about 2-story. The first day that I met Daryl, he said, "Why don't you go for 2-story?" A number of other folks have suggested that, but this is a house that, I'm pushing 50, and this is a house that we want to live in for a while. So we don't want to deal with the stairs or anything.
I can appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, there is an opportunity for the public to speak if they would like. I don't have any cards from the public. So goes back to the applicant then, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Not really. I would just thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, and I assume there's no further questions. So I will close the public portion of the hearing, and we will now move to discussions or questions of staff or starting positions. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I was impressed by what they did here. Not going 2 stories is really unusual in my experience. And because they don't go 2 stories, I think it really helps the view of the house. It is not a sprawling house. I'm also sympathetic to the fact that it's essentially a non-conforming width. And with that width, to stay 1 story, I can understand the problem they had and what their solution was, and I would much prefer that solution than a 2-story solution. So I would be inclined to approve it. As we know, this is not a variance, so the standard would be different. I think less, very frankly, but different. So I don't know how everybody else feels, but on this one, I think it is a good solution to what otherwise would be a problem.
Commissioner Tavana, followed by Janoff.
I would have to agree with that sentiment. Driving the neighborhood today and comparing all the other different homes there and looking at the plans, I would definitely say that this is compatible with the neighborhood. And then I read that, all your neighbors support it, and that led me to support this application as well.
Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a really challenging site. It's similar to one that we heard maybe our last meeting, a couple meetings ago, also on a very narrow lot. And a lot of the discussion had to do with why put the garage in the front. In the case of that property, it was deep enough, but it dropped off quite a bit, as I recall. And so there was a geologic challenge that made it difficult. In this case, you've got a short lot. So when you think about repositioning the garage to the back of the lot, that basically transforms your remaining sides to driveway. And I don't think that's a reasonable accommodation for a family. I know it's not supposed to be our purview to redesign the house, but I actually took a little piece of paper and tried to move that living room around, and it really, you lose a courtyard or you lose something, and yeah, I think you could bring the garage a foot or two to get to one side, but you're still going to be in the 5 foot on the living room side. I do appreciate that the neighbors are fully in support. I think you've probably explored what you can. It's a challenging, narrow lot. You want to maximize your one level space while still having a little bit of room outdoor. And so I think you've probably exhausted most of your options, and I would be in support of your design tonight.
Okay, further discussion? Motion? Commissioner O'Donnell. Is your mic on?
That was good. All right, I'm going to move that we approve the application by, I'm reading, by taking the following actions. Find the project is categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15303, particularly new construction or conversion of small structures, as described in Exhibit 2. Make the findings required by Section 2910-090030E, the Town Code for the demolition of an existing structure. Make the finding that the project complies with the residential guidelines for the reasons we, three of us at least, have stated. Make the finding as required by Section 2910-265-3 of the Town Code that the reduced side yard setbacks on the non-conforming lot are compatible with the neighborhood. Make the considerations by Section 2920-150 of the Town Code for granting approval of an architecture and site application. Approve the architecture and site application S19-017 with the conditions contained in Exhibit 3 and the development plans attached as Exhibit 11. Approve the application with additional and/or modified conditions, if there are any. I don't think there are. No. Okay, so just the ones I've said all the way down to F.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Badami?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, 0. Passes unanimously, 6-0. And Mr. Mullen, are there appeal rights regarding, I'm sorry, Ms. Zarnowitz?
Yes, there are, within 10 days on forms and with fees paid to the town clerk,
Okay, thank you.
to the town council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. This brings us to our last item, which is the conditional use permit application U19010. Oh, Commissioner O'Donnell, yes.
I'm within 1,000 feet of this project too, so I will recuse myself. Now, I have one question, however. My druthers would be just to go home because it's the last matter. On the other hand, I have been requested by our esteemed chairman to make a summarized report of the HPC meeting, which was today, and the meeting of October 23rd, which we've not done, so I'm going to pass that on to him.
All good things come around. Thank you for your participation. Okay, item 7, which is conditional use permit application U19010, project location 66 East Main Street, property owner Jane Thomas Living Trust, applicant Alex Anderson. 3-month status report on conditional use permit for non-formula private sports recreation club offering group classes and facilities for private fitness workout on property zone C2, APN 529-29049. Yes, Mr. Paulson, you'll be giving the staff report, I guess?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Briefly, in July, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit for the gym use in the property adjacent to Town Hall at 66 East Main Street. One of the additional conditions was that a 3-month review be done and provided to the Planning Commission. So we have provided the staff report. Based on the information in that staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission just accept this informational item as we find that the gym is in compliance with our conditional use permit and that no further reviews are necessary. And staff is available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? Yes, Commissioner Tavana.
Just a quick question. I forgot what was under the conditions for the review, but was there a construction review as part of their old property? Because I know they were remodeling it. Was a question. No.
So there's no review that's tied to their previous location, and that construction has begun.
Okay.
So, question I had, I know you've provided in the staff report, but it'd be great to hear it. Have there been any complaints from neighbors? There were a number who spoke out about the concerns about the project.
So I believe there was a complaint about a gas leaf blower that was remedied. And there was also a complaint, they had an issue with, I believe, a sewer line. And so they had, during that construction, a porta potty. So we received a complaint about that, but we do allow porta potties on site when construction's going on. So no violations of substance that have not been addressed.
Okay, thank you. So I believe, are there other questions? So I believe we need to vote on this, correct?
There's no, it's really just accepting the report, and there's no need to make a motion and vote.
Okay.
It's really just acceptance.
Okay,
Accept.
thank you. So with that, that finishes our last item on the agenda. And Mr. Paulson, do you have a report for us?
I do, thank you. So the last, actually prior to the last council meeting on November 5th, they did interviews for commission and commissioner appointments. At that, they then voted at the regular meeting, and Chair Hudas was reappointed as planning commissioner, and Jeffrey Barnett was appointed as the second member of the Planning Commission for the vacancy. There was a member, Mr. Raspy, and I cannot remember his first name off the top of my head, was appointed to the Historic Preservation Committee, and there was a vacancy that was left unfilled for the General Plan Committee. So following that item, the council adopted a resolution that basically continues the streamlining efforts until code amendments are done. Those will be coming before the Planning Commission as soon as possible, potentially before the end of the year for recommendation to council. They also discussed potential adoption of building and fire code with local amendments and did not approve those. They continued the item because they would like to discuss reach codes. The long and short of that is that for at least 2 weeks, depending on what happens on December 3rd, the town will not have local amendments for either fire or building codes. We'll be going straight building code and straight fire code without local amendments until that gets addressed. They also approved the general plan amendment relating to Highway 17, and that was before you. Mr. Morley presented that at previous meeting. And then they also approved the Hillside Development Standards and Guideline modifications, but they used the Town Council Policy Committee version for the homes in the hillsides over 5,000 square feet, which the commission had recommended that stay with the commission. They went with the Policy Committee's recommendation, which was that those items will be approved at DRC. And finally, they introduced the demo modifications that the Planning Commission reviewed as well. And then I guess one last thing, at the next meeting, the mayor, vice mayor transition will occur. So if any of you are interested in attending that, we would welcome your presence.
Okay, and what's the date for that again?
That is 11, yeah, it's the 19th of November, next Tuesday.
19th, okay, great, thank you. Okay, so commissioners serve on other town committees. Are there any reports tonight? Commissioner Badami.
The Conceptual Development Advisory Committee met earlier this afternoon. Myself, Chair Hudas, Commissioner O'Donnell, and Vice Mayor Jensen. We reviewed a mixed-use project at 16492 Los Gatos Boulevard. It would be replacing a liquor store. The proposed project would be office space with 3 apartments above. And then behind the building would be 4 townhomes, approximately 3,000 square feet in size. So we reviewed the architecture, the zoning change would be required, and the suitability of the project. At the time of the meeting, the applicant also presented an alternative project that would eliminate the office space and just be strictly residential, having 4 condominium units in front and 4 in the back, I believe. So we'll see if a project comes forward at a later date.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone from general plan? Haven't met? Okay. So historic preservation, there were 2 meetings, one on October 23rd, which I didn't attend, but I've read the minutes, 16195 George Street, which is a removal from the historic inventory, and that motion passed. Another one on 10 Charles Street, that one, again, removal and replacement in kind of cement plaster siding. That motion also passed. And 50 University Avenue, requesting approval for demolition and replacement of a structure in the Edelin Historic District, and that motion also passed. And then earlier today, we heard 2 items at Historic Preservation, 225 Wilder Avenue, which was a minor residential development, and that was approved, and 29 Broadway, which requested construction of a second-story addition on a property located in the Broadway Historic District, and that was also approved. So that's a lot of activity on a lot of committees. Thank you all for your participation and for bearing with us in this long meeting. And I think we accomplished a lot. So thank you all. Good night. This meeting is adjourned.